Hey, good morning. It's CEO Chat. It's Friday. It's 10:30. I'm Alcini, and this guy.
I'm Joe Osamendi.
It's always a pleasure.
Always a pleasure.
And we have a return guest today. His name is Dave Bookbinder. Dave, welcome to the program
Good morning,
again.
guys.
Welcome back.
Thanks for having me back. I love the new furniture, by the way.
I'm glad. You look very comfortable in that furniture.
Thank you.
Good. Thank you. For the next half hour, we're going to be talking about a book project that Dave's been working on for quite a while called The New ROI. It has resulted in this book, which you can get on Amazon, The New ROI Return on Individuals, which is a compendium of stories and different perspectives on how to get the most out of the people in your workplace, how to make your workplace a more human place to work. And Dave, we've been talking about this project for a long time. I know an awful lot of work goes into this. This is a terrific gift for any human that you know works in a workplace. I guess it's, and we're coming up on holiday season, so you might want to consider this as a gift.
Yeah, it really is for anyone, whether you're the receptionist or whether you're in the corner office. It doesn't matter. Anywhere in between, there's something in that book for everyone.
That's, I don't want to. First of all, to me anyway, personally, it's a very important topic because that's kind of the line of work we've carved out for ourselves. This is what we do. So getting the most out of the people in your organization is really the whole point of this book. How do you have to treat people in order to get them to respond in a way that gives you your best results? Is that right?
Yeah, so there's a couple different things, Al. So the intuitive part of this whole thing is that a happy employee is a more engaged employee. Right. Mm-hmm. If they're more engaged, they're more productive. Mm-hmm. My particular lens was taking that one step further and showing how that increased productivity actually translates into the increase in the value of your business. Okay. Being in the valuation space, that connection was important for me to make. So it's where the rubber meets the road for a lot of folks who are kind of numbers oriented.
That's really important. I mean, a big segment of our audience are people, CEOs of companies and owners and founders of companies, and often they have a unique perspective on the objectivity of running a business. And what sometimes they kind of overlook is that whole idea that the motivation of your people, the surprises you can get from the people who work for you, if you allow them to surprise you, could be better than anything you'd get from just ordering them to do things.
Oh, absolutely, no question. And it's interesting because I was a single dad for a long part of my life, and you work for folks, some who get it, some who don't, but the ones who don't, maybe they don't have kids, or maybe they're married and their spouse is responsible for daycare pickup, for example. For the ones that get it, me personally, I would walk through fire for those people because they gave me the freedom and latitude to do what I needed to do. Right. I became more engaged, more productive, made them look more successful. So
interesting. It's funny you mentioned parenting because it actually applies there too. When you interact with your kids to impress other people about what a great parent you are, you're not as authentic and you're not as good a parent as when you just interact with your kids because you enjoy their company.
Exactly.
And learning to like people and overcoming that sort of immediate bias to want to compete with them is, I think, key to making your workforce work more effectively for you.
Yeah, and it isn't even necessarily that you have to like everybody or even be their buddy, so to speak. You just have to be human. Like you said, it's about being authentic. People want to know that people care about them, right? They want to know that if they were out yesterday because their kid was sick, if you come back into work, somebody should at least say to you, how's your kid doing? You might think, right? When you don't get that little bit of feedback, you start to wonder.
It's showing empathy for people is what you want to do. Exactly.
Yeah, it's the golden rule, right?
So really quickly, not quickly, take all the time you want. How does this book get me there?
How does that book get you there? Well, it starts out from my lens as a valuation professional, and it starts with the idea that I've been in the valuation and consulting business for my entire career, and I value businesses, I value intellectual property, I value intangible assets. One of the intangible assets I've always valued throughout my career is the human capital asset. Right now, as we sit here today, human capital does not show up on a financial statement. Right. I didn't want to throw any stones at my industry or the accounting profession regarding that matter, but I never thought that the way we value people told the whole story. So I started out with an article about how we in the valuation world value our assembled workforce, and kind of left it with a question that I think there's more out there to this than what we do. It's a cost to replace, it doesn't tell the whole story. And when I did that, people started to show up and tell me this is something bigger than one article. Talk to him, talk to her, look at that company. And then it became a series. We started to talk about how do you define a rock star. And then more people kept showing up. Then it was talking about trust. It was talking about innovation. It was talking about the alignment of brand and culture, which you know a little bit about, I understand.
Yeah, page 93.
Yeah, there you go. And it just kept growing. But as the valuation person in me, I always wanted to try and make that case that all these kind of woo-woo softer issues were nice to have, and they're important. Don't get me wrong, they're super important, but that there's an ROI on this, because that's where you really start to see the change. If somebody in the C-suite buys into the idea that not only do I want to just do this because everybody else is doing it, and because if I want to attract and retain people, if I want to keep my employees in the workforce, I need to do this to be like everybody else. But guess what? There's real documented evidence that by doing these things, behaving in these manners, and treating your people in this fashion, there really is an ROI and a demonstrated increase in the value of their business.
Well, that's significant. And you know, another thing I like about the book and the way you've approached it is you're not the sole author. You've actually worked with a number of authors to pull this together.
Oh yeah.
So what you get out of this is a series of lessons, actual practical tools and tips that you can use to change the way you interact with your people in a way that gets you better results and improves the value of your company.
Yeah, no question. And that's the cool thing, that these people started to show up and wanted to participate in this project. Every one of them has a different lens, different perspective, and as you've said many times, we're all climbing the same mountain just from different sides. And as everybody's going through their day-to-day with their particular lens and their particular focus, maybe sometimes it's hard to see the bigger picture. And what I found as I started to talk to these folks was there's a lot of dots here that are connected. And if you start to connect all these dots, which I've tried to do in the book, you get to a spot at the end where you maybe get that aha moment.
Well, that's terrific. Now, what kind of response are you getting to it?
Phenomenal. Everybody who has seen it, read it, has been just super positive about it. The reviews on Amazon are excellent, and the feedback I've gotten from people who literally have just reached out to me, either through email or through LinkedIn, have just been wonderful.
What I like about the book, too, is it covers every employee, like you said, not just the C-suite or anything else, but basically every employee in any organization can benefit from it.
Yeah.
So there's something in this for everybody.
There is.
Whether you run the company or work in the company, whether you're the janitor or the secretary or the receptionist or the boss.
That's exactly right. Receptionist or corner office, doesn't matter, anywhere in between. If you're an employee or if you're responsible for leading employees, there's something in there for you.
Great.
Well, I mean, from our point of view, that brand and culture alignment piece, getting everybody in the organization to behave with the kind of pride that you want to create in being a member of that organization, that's really key to expressing your brand and making people feel comfortable with what you do for them.
Yeah, no question about that. Absolutely.
That's terrific.
Now it's time for our first break,
Okay.
but we'll be right back.
We're coming back. We're going to talk more about the new ROI.
Absolutely.
Thanks. Welcome back to CEO Chat. My name is Al Cini.
Joe Osamendi, as usual.
And just as usual, it's always good to see
right.
you. Today we're talking about this book. Tyler, our producer, is saying, hold it still, don't wave it. So I'm holding it still. Read the title, buy the book. It's a terrific book. This is about...
You're blocking the author's name.
I'm sorry, I'm blocking the author's name. I need to be careful about that. By our guest today, Dave Bookbinder. I think I want to start this segment, Dave, by talking about all the people you collaborated with. Now, I know in the first segment you talked about how you kind of approach the whole topic of employees as value items, kind of from an oblique direction, meaning you realized people were valuable. But then you started collaborating with a whole bunch of people who specialized in different aspects of that. Talk about what that was like.
Exactly. So because this thing never was intended to be a book, it started out as that one article that grew into what became a series, and then that became a community. At some point, it just occurred to me and the folks I was collaborating with that we really needed to put this into one spot so that if somebody really was interested in taking the dive, they didn't have to backlink and click through the internet. They could actually look at one place to find all this information. So you mentioned some of the collaborators. Initially, the valuation issues that I had about my belief that the cost to replace wasn't the right way to think about valuing people, I needed to get some kind of validation. So if there's a Mount Rushmore in valuation, there's a fellow by the name of Chris Mercer who'd be on it.
Okay.
So Chris Mercer lent his voice to the project and basically validated my supposition there and added some good feedback into the book. So beyond the valuation space, Jeff Higgins, who's the CEO of Human Capital Management Institute, brings a different lens in what they're doing with human capital financial statements. Cheryl Hunter is an expert in resilience, talking about the resilience in business. I'm going to apologize in advance. I'm probably not going to name every collaborator, but
there are a lot of them in the book.
But different lenses and different perspectives. So like Dr. Janice Presser from the Gabriel Institute, who's an expert on teaming and what she brings to the table. Your group with the alignment of brand and culture is so important. Dave Nast, who's an expert on workplace behavior analytics, lent his voice to this project. The folks at Workplace Dynamics, they're now rebranded as Energage. They've interviewed probably, I think it's 14 million employees over the course of their existence. They know a little bit about engagement and culture. So there have been a lot of contributors. Colloquia Partners, who does integration in M&A space. So when you think about mergers and acquisitions, depending on the statistics you look at, roughly 85% of all deals fail to live up to the synergies that they're supposed to have. Why is that? Number one reason is the failure to integrate your people, not integrate systems.
Easily overlooked and critical item.
Right, so Laura Queen from Colloquia lent her experience, but not only that, I got two other CFOs who've been through the M&A process, Pam Pryor, Glenn Hartenbaum, who've been through it, to lend their story and their voice to this. So there's a lot of validation from other experts, other lenses, and it's just been a wonderful experience.
It's an all-star lineup, I'll tell you that.
Oh, yeah,
it's an all-star lineup.
That's so key.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm going to hold the book up again because HR directors ought to buy this book. As you were talking, I'm thinking to myself, people in the human capital function inside of a company are always looking for ways to engage their employees, and there are dozens of really great suggestions in the book for doing that.
Yeah, it's interesting. I was at the largest corporate finance conference on the East Coast this past week, and I attended one of the breakout sessions on human capital. And these are folks who are in the human capital space, and admittedly, I'm not in the human capital space. I have an interest in it. But the
You kind of put yourself in it.
Well, it feels that way. And that was the aha moment for me.
You belong there. You're a real advocate. It's terrific.
Well, that was the aha moment for me. As I'm sitting in the room and listening to the dialogue, I realize more and more that the issues that we talk about in the book have such resonance, and it's everywhere. It's a universal subject.
I think there's so many different things I want to say about this. Here's what I think the emphasis for most business leaders, and I know that's our audience, right?
Exactly.
Most business leaders are totally focused on how do I find the best possible person I can for this job. But there's another aspect of the evaluation of people, which has to do with the people who are already in the jobs that you have.
Yeah.
It's not just about finding excellent people. It's about taking ordinary people and giving them the tools they need to become the best they can possibly be.
Yeah, I'm going to tell you another reason why it's really important. I started this conversation by telling you that as we sit here today, human capital doesn't appear in a financial statement. There's a convergence that's happening in the industry right now, both on the AICPA side and on the SEC side. The SEC is being petitioned very hard about disclosure requirements for public filers and regarding their human capital investment.
Really?
Yeah.
That's there.
And the AICPA has the Human Capital Management Coalition.
Okay.
It's an investor group. They're responsible for roughly $3 trillion in assets under management.
Okay.
Want these disclosures for these companies that they're investing in. I mean, so think about it this way. If you're investing in a business and you knew that the senior management of that company turned over every 3 years, how would you feel about that?
Not very good.
That would be,
You might want to know that, right?
Right.
So there's this convergence between what's happening on the public reporting side with the SEC and what the AICPA is requiring potentially in terms of valuation in purchase accounting. And long story very short, in my view, I think in the next 12 to 18 months, you're probably going to wind up seeing human capital back on a financial statement, or at least more disclosures about human capital.
About human capital.
Companies are going to be required to do it.
Are going to be required. So in the annual report, you're going to see a discussion about how we value our people and why that valuation makes a difference to our shareholders and to our customers.
Right, and connecting more dots in what I do day to day, when you think about having that public data available that you can use to benchmark, you can now bring that into your private company valuation exercises and really demonstrate the value that people bring to the business.
That is really exciting. And that's a huge change in the whole culture of how you value a business.
Yeah.
And so in a way, what you're doing is riding a wave, and this is your surfboard.
Yeah, it feels that
and
way.
that really is terrific. I mean, it's a wave that's just beginning to crest now, and you're right on top of it.
And now we got to ride and wait for our next commercial break. But
You're so good at this.
We'll be right back with
We'll be back in about a minute with a great guest, Dave
Exactly.
Bookbinder. Thanks.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to CEO Chat. I'm Joe Osamendi.
And I'm Alcini.
And we're very privileged to have Dave Bookbinder as our guest today, author of this book, The New ROI. Dave, this is a fascinating subject. And why don't you tell us and our audience exactly where you see this evolving right now?
That's a great question, because if you would have asked me 2 years ago, so Dave, are you working on a book? The answer would have been no. I wasn't working on a book. I honest to God don't know. This, again, all started from one article that grew into a series and then grew into a community.
Okay.
I've been kind of riding the wave and following wherever people are leading me in this thing as people were starting to show up and bringing different perspectives. So I don't have a master plan. I never did. But I can tell you that it's been a growing phenomenon. I'm not the only one who's talking about this, right? Everywhere you turn, you see stories about engagement and corporate culture and things like that. But I think what I'm doing here is I'm at least adding some value in making this subject more top of mind by sharing with other people.
Well, that, during the break you were talking about how you're not the smartest guy in the room, and you communicated that you feel like you're lucky to have met all these people, but the reality is everybody in this book is lucky to have met you, because pulling all those thoughts and ideas together without any regard for your own gain in all this, and I know you did this strictly from your heart. I mean, this is a labor of love for you, and I know that. And I think everybody owes you a huge debt of gratitude for pulling that audience and that community together.
Well, I appreciate the kind words. I'm grateful to them and everyone that's participated in this, everybody who's lent their voice to this. And you're right, there was never any economic intention on this. There was never an economic motivation for me. There still isn't. This literally started from this notion that we really need to think more about our people.
I see this as a beginning, not an end. This is the beginning of this whole discussion.
Yeah, I think you're right. I do. I think there's probably a book too somewhere in there. Okay. I ask in the book if you or someone you know is familiar with an organization that became intentional about corporate culture. I would love to hear those stories. Maybe there's some case studies that we can share. The work is still evolving in this, as I mentioned before, about what's happening in the regulatory world and what may be happening for disclosure. So there's definitely more to this story to come.
Well, then that's another message for people who are watching the program and listening to you, Dave. If you've got a LinkedIn account, and you probably do, you should go and join the group, the New ROI. You have a LinkedIn group called New ROI?
That's correct, yeah, New ROI Return On Individuals.
Do a search for that. I think you already have close to 600 members in that group.
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah, well, that number could be substantially larger than that.
Yeah, it's
and
growing.
You just heard Dave. If you've got a story about how you improve the performance of your business by addressing human factors in the way you manage it, Dave definitely wants to hear it, and the New ROI group could be a place where you could share it.
Yeah, that's the idea. It's a community of like-minded people that believe what we believe, that people really are our company's most valuable asset. I share a couple of case study stories in the book here, again, just as a validation that actually demonstrates this stuff works.
Well, I think that's key. So many organizations that I work with are struggling continually with their performance improvement process, whatever that is. Everybody knows they need to have one, and everybody believes they understand how it ought to work. But really, what the book is about is trying to get people to tap into the desire to be better than they are on their own, getting them. It's one thing to get people to follow your directives, but it's another thing to get people so motivated and so engaged that they come up with things you wouldn't have thought of.
Exactly.
And that's where the real value of the company comes from.
Yeah, that's, as you described, it's the discretionary effort. We talk about that there as well. You shared with me a great analogy about the expectations for a cup, the performance objectives, right? Hold the liquid, maybe keep it at temperature for a little bit, but that's about it. The cup's never going to exceed your expectations and write a symphony or improve your supply chain.
Can't do that.
And if you treat your people the same way, yeah.
So inventions like Post-it notes, probably a lot of the innovations we see in iPhones, these are things that come from employees who are actively engaged in their work because the company they work for encourages that.
Yeah, gives them a platform for continual improvement, really.
Sure. And I would ask anybody who's watching, just think about a time where you worked for somebody that you really liked, really respected, you believed that they believed in you, and how did you respond when they asked you to do a task? You most often will go above and beyond for that person, and you will exceed expectations because it matters to you.
And that's really the magic of human capital. That's where it really pays off. That's a return on investment right there.
Exactly.
I mean, that's now all of a sudden it's not just them doing what you want them to do. They're doing things that you would have never thought to ask them to do that actually add value to your company.
Correct.
They take ownership in the company.
Yeah, and again, it's diametrically opposed to the way we think about valuing people today in terms of that cost to replace model, where everybody's fungible. You know, if we know your salary, and we can figure out how long it's going to take you to get up a learning curve, essentially, that's your value. But that ignores all the softer things. It ignores the discretionary effort. It ignores that institutional knowledge of replacing somebody who's been in a company for 10 years, for example. just knowing what your boss likes to see and how
Right.
they want it presented,
Yeah.
that matters. It makes a big difference.
You used the word earlier, intentional. Thinking it through, meaning deliberately treating people in a way that you know will get you those results by understanding how people behave.
Yeah.
And I think the book is a terrific guide for that. I mean, you know, that we're ordinarily you wouldn't think all that much about it. Like you said, they're fungible, replaceable components. If you just sort of change your mindset, and then the new ROI, hold up the book, Joe.
There you
Make
go.
sure everybody can see it. Buy that book.
Yeah. We talk about perspective in there. Exactly. So it's shifting that perspective, shifting the attitude.
Oh, great. Well, we're coming up on the end of our program, so what I'd like, you've been on the show before, so you know the drill.
Yeah.
There's your camera. Give us a minute, tell us what we need to do.
Yeah, sure. So my name is Dave Bookbinder, and if you're interested at all, the book is available on Amazon. It's called The New ROI Return on Individuals. There's a LinkedIn community, as Al mentioned, The New ROI Return on Individuals as well. We'd love you to be a part of the conversation. And if you'd like to reach out to me, you can find me on LinkedIn, Facebook, and Twitter.
Terrific, Dave. Thank you very much for appearing.
My pleasure. Thanks so much for having me. Really
And thanks
appreciate it.
especially for pulling this book together.
This
It
book
is a
right there.
terrific work.
It was a lot of fun. I'm
And
really
you should be
proud of it.
really
Thank
proud
you.
of it.
Thank you.
Buy
Excellent.
it, you'll love it.
Yeah, really
Absolutely.
terrific.
Wealth of information and a timely, right, with what's going on in the world right now.
It's actually
Absolutely.
perfect. I mean, the timing is absolutely right, so
Good.
great. Thank you all for joining us today on CEO Chat. I'm Al Cini, and who are you again?
I'm still Joe Assamini.
It's so much fun working with you. And we'll be back in a half an hour with another CEO Chat. But thank you for joining us
Thank
today.
you for joining us. Please be careful out there. Be safe. Have a great weekend. We'll see you in a half an hour.
Thanks again, Dave.
Thanks, Dave.